Okay, so I thought I'd make a video showing how to rig pants. Rigging pants is fairly simple, although there are a few things that you need to know. It is always easier to rig pants that are in the A pose with the legs spread apart than in the T pose. Primarily because when they're in the T pose, let me put this on its own layer here. Okay. A lot of mesh, there's no thigh gap. And that really becomes an issue when rigging the pants. Even if there is a thigh gap, it is still an issue because when you go to copy the weights, the vertices are so close together that you'll end up with weights from one leg onto the other leg of your pants, and so that can be a real pain. So the easiest way to do it, although, how can I say this? It is always best to rig your clothes to the bind pose position of the avatar that you're rigging them for. One way you can find out what is the bind pose of this particular mesh avatar. This is a Slink hourglass avatar, and this is the one that I opened up the blend file and exported it out and then imported it in as a DAE, an Avastar DAE, and then imported it using the dev kit importer. I think it was this section here, the second type, to bring in the dev kit. And so if you ever want to know what the bind pose is for a particular mesh, to select the mesh, go Maya Star and Detach Skin. Don't delete history, detach skin. Okay. And when I detach the skin, you see it's not rigged anymore, and it didn't change position. So that's the bind pose that mesh body is for. At least the mesh body that is provided in the dev kit. Remember, the body that they provide in the dev kit is not the body that they sell in Second Life. So if most of the time it is the same, but sometimes it is possible when somebody is creating their dev kit for their mesh body to have the mesh body dev kit be in a different bind pose than the actual bind pose of the mesh than the actual avatar is that they sell in Second Life. So but I'd be willing to bet that 99% of the time or 95% of the time it is the same. Okay. Okay, so we know it is the T pose, is the bind. So normally I would recommend usually that you bind your clothing to the bind pose that the mesh body actually is in. But in this case with pants, I would say it's probably easier, better not to. Simply because if you bind it in the A pose, then you have you have more distance in the vertices between the legs. So let's see. So this looks like it's about 10 degrees. That looks off for some reason. Oh, because these two, I accidentally rotated it. There we go. Okay, I accidentally rotated it. These two. Okay, so then this would be minus 10 degrees. Okay. So, awesome. Okay, so there's two different ways you can go about this. The fastest and easiest way, although it may not always be the most accurate way, would be to, if you've downloaded the Max Skin Weights tool, like I said, although I know High-End 3D is having problems, so we might have to find out how to get this this tool another way. But Max Skin Weights is a wonderful, wonderful tool. I provided a link in one of my other videos. I think it's number 5 in the video rigging series, that shows where you can get it. But I think it's in high-end 3D, and high-end 3D has been down for quite a while. So if anybody knows what's going on with high-end 3D, please let me know, or leave a comment in the comment section, or if you maybe we'll try to find out how we can get this free plugin elsewhere. So anyway, so the easiest way it would be to select the mesh body first, shift select the clothing, and then hit this transfer button right here. And now if we go into the female walk mode and we make her walk, you see it transferred the weights really super nicely. We don't see any poke through, everything looks nice and smooth. So that's one great way of doing it. Let's see, if you open up the MayaStar female attribute editor, if we go to, like, say, body fat, you can try to see if there's any poke through. So in this case, it looked like it did a really, really nice job. If we go to, let's pause this, reset the mesh. If we come here and we don't want that one, and we rotate this out, say 90 degrees, and rotate that -90, and then if we select our mesh, we can see it's it's not super smooth, it's not too bad. What we could do is we could come here to the vertex tool and select a couple of these, and then come in here, and you can use max skin weights to play around with the weights and adjust the weights that way. Or we can use the other tool, the Brave Rabbit Smooth Skin tool, which, like I said, go into my video rigging series that I just came out with a couple of weeks ago. I think it's number 5, rigging a shirt or whatever, and in the description will be where you can get Brave Rabbits, and it's also a free plugin. So and once you install it, I'm using an older version of Maya 2015, so it looks a little bit different than yours. Now mine, for some reason, when I hit apply, I always get an error. So I made a button up here that does the same thing as this apply button, but I don't know why it works and the other one doesn't. See? And there you can smooth out the weights. If I hide the skeleton, so I can select these vertices in between. Select, okay, I'm going to hide the hourglass body. We don't need it for right now, or better yet, make it a reference. So I can't select it, and then, whoops, select those vertices and smooth it. Okay, that smooth? I guess it did. Smooth. Whoops, maybe not that. Those. Okay, but every time you do anything sort of like smoothing wise, it may not, you might start to get some poke through that we didn't have before. So I'm selecting that vertex, and then I'm hitting the left arrow to select that vertex, which is underneath here that you can't see. If I go to move it, you can see it is selected. And then expand the selection and smooth it. But see, when you smooth it, sometimes you start to get poke through. But if you're using the alpha to hide the body anyway, you would get a smoother look to your finished to your finished mesh. But we can always go to the bind pose and here's another trick that took me forever to figure out. If you select the mesh body, say you have the mesh body and you only want to copy the weights over to some of them, to some of the vertices in your mesh and not the whole mesh. You select the body first. I usually put it on a different layer so I can hide it. And then hold down the right mouse button. You have to do it by holding down the right mouse button on top of your mesh. Select vertices, and then you can Control Shift select an area. Oh, and I'm going to hit Q on the keyboard for select just to get rid of that move tool there. And then do the same thing over here. Oops. To get that area. And I do have it on, oh, I don't have it on camera-based selection. So I may not have wanted to turn on camera-based selection, so I can just get rid of these. Because I didn't want to copy the weights over on those. Okay. So say it was just this area here that I wanted to copy the weights over to. Now remember, I still have the hourglass body selected. I'm just adding to the selection of the hourglass body. That's why I'm using, to the selection. That's why I'm using Control Shift. That adds to the selection without losing what you had selected before. And then you can go My Star Skin Weights tool, copy skin weights, and then just copy it. Now it doesn't look like anything changed, but once I go back to here, now we've got those weights. Remember we had the poke through before? And this is where, like I said, then you can select a little area and then try smoothing it and see how that looks. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. And you can do the same thing here. Increase the selected area and then smooth it with Brave Rabbits. And like I said, it's always good to go to the body fat. And good. Everything looks good. So, yeah, it took me forever to figure out the right steps to do the copy skin weights on individual vertices. It wasn't easy because but yeah, I find it, yeah. So yeah, so then that looks pretty good. Like I said, if you did get poked through, if you're using an alpha to hide anyway, you could just smooth with Brave Rabbit and then not worry about it. Because you're hiding the body with the alpha anyway. But if you want to try to get it so that your clothes don't need an alpha, this is one way. Okay, so that's one way. That's with that is with using the Max Skin Weights plugin. But if you can't find the Max Skin Weights plugin, how else can you do it? Okay, so let's go to bind pose. Okay, and I'm going to detach the skin of the pants. So now it's not rigged anymore. I'll delete the history just to make sure. Delete history so everything is cool. Okay. Although did I just... Yep, it's still on its own layer. Okay. So let's show the skeleton. Okay, so this is kind of the older way of doing it. Show the body. Is go My Star. I'm going to tear this off real quick. My Star, all bone select. Okay. And shift select your pants. then go to Smooth Bind Skin. And you can see these are the settings you should use. Selected joints. We are going to be copying the weight, so it doesn't really matter if closest distance or classic linear. Those two are fine. Interactive, you definitely want. Distance is fine. Allow multiple bind poses is okay. Working on a new version of MayaStar that will allow you to use multiple bind poses. But if you didn't have that, or the other way of doing it, if you got an older version of MayaStar, is to go to Skin Weights tool, create bind pose. Okay, so now that's the bind pose. Not for these pants. All that did was that made that the skeleton in this pose right here is the bind pose. So let's do this again. So you go all bones select, shift select your pants, come over here, and we have allow multiple bind poses off, and all those same settings, max influence 4, because that's the maximum influences you can have in Second Life, and you bind skin, and now it's bound, but it has the default rigging, as you can see. Getting a lot of poke through here, and if we go to the body fat, you can see it doesn't hardly change at all, because that's just the default. Okay, so let's go to bind pose, skin, go to bind pose. Okay, with our pants selected. Okay, so now this is where you would select the body, and let's make sure that that's not in reference mode. Good. Okay, shift select your pants. Right. I'm gonna hide the skeleton just because it's easier to not accidentally click on bones that way. And then go to Skin Weight Tools, copy skin weights. These are the settings I use. Closest point on surface, 1 to 1, none to none, and normalize. And you click copy. And then you can have her walking. And it looks like it copied the weights really nicely. Overall, it looks really good. Okay, let's go to the bind pose again. See, this one won't work. Go to bind pose right now because I do have other bind poses. Other mesh are rigged in different bind poses. That's why this guy go to bind pose won't work in here. You have to select the mesh, and even if you select the mesh and go to bind pose, it won't work because it's showing what go to bind pose in MayaStar does is it selects the M pelvis bone. Older versions of Maya, you selected a bone and then you went to bind pose. You would go skin, go to bind pose. But once they started allowing multiple bind poses in MayaStar, in Maya, that caused an error. Now, if there was only one bind pose rigged to a skeleton, then that way of going to the bind pose of selecting the bone and then, or a bone, any bone, doesn't matter, and the skeleton, and go skin, go to bind pose, it would work. But because there are multiple bind poses, that doesn't work anymore. Once you do have multiple bind poses on the skeleton. So you have to select a mesh and then go to bind pose. Okay. So how do you smooth the weights if you need to smooth them? Without it, I'm just selecting the M hip left, make that 90. Come over here, make this negative 90. Okay, I'm going to hide the skeleton so it's less of a pain. And then I'm going to go to Skin Weight Tools, Paint Skin Weights tool. And this is where you could smooth different weights if you really felt you needed to. So you could come in here and go to smooth, and let's see, smooth. Let's bring this down to, well, let's try one first. Yeah. you know. And so that's a way you could smooth the weights if you needed to smooth them. Okay, so let's see if we hold down the B key, that allows us to left mouse button. Okay, like right here, I would increase the left leg, upper leg. So if I come to here and scroll down a little bit, there's left upper leg. I would want to increase set to 100. So okay, I'll get value. We don't want it nearly that high. So maybe like 0.01 maybe. And then whoop, left upper leg. Why'd that go down? Oh, replace. We want to add. We want to add influence. There we go. So we're adding the influence. And I'm just click, 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 click. And that's how you would do it the old-fashioned way. And then, of course, make her bring the other leg forward. You'd want to come to the right upper leg then. Whoops. Whoops. Right upper leg, we're still on add, and just click, click, click. Still a little bit over here. So I would go back to the left upper leg. And add a little bit more influence here. Because it's the left upper leg that changes, that one rotates. It gets rotated along with the left hip. So this is the left hip bone right here, and that's what actually rotates. And this little bone right here that's sticking out in the middle of nowhere, that's the left upper leg. That's the collision volume bone, or the C bone, often referred to as collision bone or collision volume bone or C bone, and that's the one that changes scale when you change the body fat, or the leg thickness or whatever it is. If I go to, let me go to the outliner and select it in the outliner so you can see. Okay, left upper leg. See, there are the scales. So when I change the body fat, see, it changes. Don't ask me why they didn't make the default scale 1, 1, and 1. We did for all the new bento bones. Their default scales are all 1, 1, and 1. Why Linda Lab decided to do these weird numbers for the collision volume bones. Probably because it was easier than creating a new mesh. It's a whole nother story. So, okay, so let me just come back here to, well, I guess I gotta select the mesh again. And go to paint skin weights. Okay, but yeah, so the more white something is, the more influence that has. Pure white is 100% influence. Gray means it's an influence of at least one other bone. Most likely the pelvis bone. If we go here to the pelvis, yep, see this little area has a little bit of influence on that. Or the pelvis bone, it's pretty dark over here. Here's a little bit here. But yeah, left upper leg, left knee, hip. See, there's a little bit of influence of the hip. The hip doesn't change scale. You can see it's the hip, or the hip bone has this, I believe it's scale 1, 1, and 1, and it doesn't change scale. So it has a little bit of influence on there. That's just how when Shadeen created her hourglass mesh, she decided to put a little bit of influence on there when she was painting it. Yeah, so anyway, so that's pretty much it. So that's how to rig pants, both with and without the plugins. I highly recommend getting Brave Rabbit. After you rig the pants, like I said, you want to see what they look like and watch her walk. See if there's any poke through, but everything looks really good. So the next thing you want to do is you're going to be exporting out your pants. So like I said, go to my rigging series. I think it's number 5, and there's a couple of other links to some scripts. This is a great script here. I call it 5 or more. If you select your mesh and you click that, it will go through your mesh and it'll find all the vertices that have more than 5 bones influencing it. Even though we had 4 max influence on it, when you copy weights over and you smooth weights, especially copying weights, lots of times it'll end up having more than 5 bones influencing it. And so and they highlights them. It selects them all here and there that have more than 5 bones on it. So what happens if you don't do this is if I were to just export out this as a DAE and upload it, Linden Lab will prune those extra weights off, and that can really throw off your weighting, your rigging. Because it just decides, I think, randomly which bone to get rid of on a vertice, and sometimes you get rid of a really important one and it messes up the weights on that. So yeah, that took me a while to figure out too. So then what you do is you go back into object mode, you select your pants, and then you run, like I said, this is another Mel script that you can get off of those links in that video, is 4 max, and it's done already. It does, and then I'm going to run the 5 max again, and I mean, it just takes a split second to run the 4 max, and what that does is it prunes the weights so that you only have 4 max influence. Don't use the one that's in here. It's still running. It takes a while to run the 5 or more max. It's a little bit of a slower, but it does really good. So it looks like it finished and it didn't find any. So awesome. So now if you double check to see, let's go back in object mode. Whoops, I want object. Okay, so if we go back to here and you see what if anything drastically changed. You make her, I should have closed increase her body fat again, make sure nothing looks like it's changed. Okay, awesome. Do not use, if you go to skeleton, I think it's skeleton? Skin. Set max influence. Don't use this. Don't come in here and set that to 4 and click apply and close, or apply and close, because that does a horrible job at getting rid of those extra. This does as bad a job as Linden Labs does. It does a horrible job. It will mess up your weighting. So that's why I love this Mel script. It does a really wonderful job. Okay, so we're almost there. Next thing you need to do is go Maya Star with your pants selected, remove unused influences. and it removed 144 bones out of the skin cluster. You're only allowed 110. So, and it removes all the bones that don't have any weight on them. Okay, and we got all those bones because we selected all the bones in the skeleton. But that's the safest way to do it. All bone select, you know, when you do your initial rigging, so that all the bones are in the skin cluster before you copy the weights from the avatar to the pants. Otherwise, you might forget a bone, and if you forget a bone, then your weights are going to be all messed up. So remove unused influences will get your mesh down to less than 110 bones. In this case, it's probably only 10 or so bones that these pants are rigged to. If you're curious as to what bones are my mesh rigged to, open up the script editor, clear the script editor history. Here, the display, clear history by holding down the right mouse button. With your pants selected or your clothes selected, go Maya Star for earlier versions of Maya Star. Where is it? Skin cluster bone names. And it will give you a list of all the bones that your mesh is rigged to. And it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, about 15 bones that it's rigged to, if I counted right, which is way less than 110. So this is ready to export out as a DAE. You don't have to go to bind pose before you export out your mesh, but then now this is ready to be exported out. So you can go Maya Star, export selection, and then export it out as a DAE. And like I said, I have another video that goes over all the different export settings. So you're ready to export out and to upload to Second Life. So awesome. So that's how to rig pants. It's fairly simple. Once you've done it a few times, it'll be second nature. Like I said, pants are one of the few exceptions that I would not rig in the bodies, the mesh body that you're making them for's bind pose. That's probably the only exception. If you're doing shirts, I would definitely do it in the mesh's bind pose position, not in a different, like an A pose. You can create your mesh in an A pose and then retopologize it, and then then deform it so that it's in the T pose, and then delete the history, and then rig it while it's in the T pose. But that's maybe I'll do a whole nother video on that, or maybe I already did one. I'm not sure. I can't remember. So anyway, okay. Well, where's our other hand? I must have accidentally deleted it. Anyway, yeah, that's how you rig pants. Awesome. See you in the next video.